somebody on TikTok asked me to explain how I made this, and I'm bad at explaining, but I'm going to make an attempt and see if it helps people make one themselves. So let's see how this goes. The easiest way to start is to explain exactly what I use. So I used this paper. You can use any paper. This is just specifically what I had. This cardboard tube, I'm not exactly sure what it is. I think it might be a wrapping paper tube. It could be something else, but a paper towel tube will work. You might just have to cut it to make it slightly smaller. Various tools to cut paper and cardboard with. You don't have to use a paper cutter. I just prefer it because I can't cut in a straight line to save my life. So, paper cutter. Any kind of thicker cardboard will work. I prefer to use display boards just because I have one around my room and I just cut it into pieces whenever I need something made out of cardboard. Any kind of cardboard from a box or something will work. I just prefer the thicker type cardboard. And to make the bulb of the flashlight shape, I wasn't sure how I was going to do that out of paper, so I didn't. I happened to be drinking one of these and I was like, oh hey, that's the shape I need. So I chopped off the top of it like right above the label. I'm not going to do that here because it's kind of not fun to cut through plastic bottles, but that's the general idea. I'll explain further what I did with it later, but for now, this is just the material I used to make the bulb part. This was probably the most important part of the whole thing. You can use glue or any other kind of adhesive, but I was impatient. I could barely wait for the paint to dry, so I wasn't going to use glue, so I used tape instead. There's a more efficient way to do this. Yes, double-sided tape would work a lot better. I didn't have that, so I just used tape and painted over it where you could see it. These two aren't really necessary. I prefer them. This is acrylic gesso just to make it an easier surface to paint on. But you don't have to. You can just do a layer of white paint underneath and then paint on top of it. Same with Mod Podge. I prefer to seal things with Mod Podge now that I have it, but you can also use packing tape. So if you want to seal it in, you don't have to buy this because it can get kind of expensive, but they do have tiny bottles of it at Dollar Tree sometimes. So if you just want a little bit for a couple projects, I would recommend getting it there because the big bottle is like $8 at Walmart. So, not everyone wants to spend $8 on sealant. And the last few things I used are more of just like decoration pieces. I just used regular 50-cent acrylic paint that I mixed into a custom color to paint the outside. I cut the eraser off of a pencil to make the little button, and this is called natural braiding cord. You can get it pretty cheap at Walmart. I don't know where the package is. But this is what I used to do the string along the outside, and yeah, that's all the materials I used to make the flashlight. So I'm going to start explaining how I actually made it. The first thing that I did was cut this down to the size that I wanted it. I used a real flashlight for like an example and then made it a little bit longer because it's a cartoon prop, so I figured it would look neater if it was longer. I'm not going to actually cut this one because I'm saving it to make something for my younger brother, but essentially I just measured it out to how I wanted to cut it. I think I cut it that long. So I just cut it off, and then I took my paper because I wanted this to be thicker but not too thick. So basically I just sat here and wrapped a few layers of paper around it and taped each layer down until I got it to the way that I wanted it. This is a step you don't even have to do at all. It was just something that I prefer to do. So if you don't want to do it, you can skip it. I just think it looks cool. So, again, not cutting through the plastic right now because it's kind of an annoying process, but the end of these bottles fits directly into the tube. So I just kind of stuck it in there and then filled in this hole with more like folded up paper until it was fairly even. And of course at the end you cover it with like a band of pink because that's in the cartoon. That's what it actually looks like. And string around the edges because that is also what the thing looks like. So it doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to look somewhat like a cohesive flashlight shape. This is easier to explain on the actual finished product, but because I used plastic and the ends were kind of jagged, I didn't want to leave that uncovered, so I took paper and just folded over the inside and taped it down on the in and outside and then squeezed it around the base of the bottleneck. Just because I felt like that made it look more like a flashlight. Yes, it's wrinkly, but that doesn't really bother me. If it bothers you, I'm sure there's a better way to do it. I don't know a better way to do it, so And this is actually a strip of paper. You could just paint this on. I wanted to use a strip of paper because I had some stuff I wanted to cover up here. So I just folded up a piece of paper until it was the way I wanted it and taped it together. Again, eraser from a pencil. And after I covered the entire thing in paper and tape, I then painted it. But before I paint it, I also cut out a circle of display board to paint as the flashlight lens, and a circle to cover this up. This step is completely optional. It's something I prefer to do when I make props because it makes them feel more solid and weighty. I filled this entire thing with scraps of paper just to give it a bit more of a weight to it so it's more fun to hold, and then I capped it off with another smaller circle of display board. And the crystal was not much more difficult than that. I drew the crystal out in my sketchbook, and then I cut it out and painted and colored it on paper. And I just cut out a little diamond shape out of my display board and put it in the center, and then taped both edges on, and then covered it in glossy Mod Podge to make it shiny. Again, that part's optional. I prefer the look of it because I like things that are shiny, so I also did that with the flashlight lens. And then once I got everything put together the way that I wanted it, I wrapped the string around it, and I cut these little notches in here to hold the string still because it kept moving and it bothered me. And I actually prefer Mod Podging the outside simply because of the string, so what I did was I put a lot of it on the string just to make it more solid so it would stop moving. I'm sure if you push hard enough you could make it move, but for the most part, just for general prop use, it won't move, so I'm sure that could be accomplished with packing tape, but I think Mod Podge is easier. This is probably a really bad tutorial, but I don't know how to explain things. It's basically just you wrap a tube in paper and tape and stick the end of a Coke bottle in it and pray it stays together. I can't explain things. That's all that I did. This was an idea I got at 4 a.m. because brain go brr, so. I do hope this helps though.